So we find ourselves in yet again another vehicle that has launch control, and if you guys have seen my recent driving reviews with any vehicles that have launch control, of course you know we're going to test that out. So to do that, here in the 2025 Genesis G80 3.5T Sport Prestige, first you want to put the vehicle in the Sport Plus drive mode, which is 2 presses of a button with the drive mode selection there. You want to go ahead and hold the traction control down here on the left of the steering wheel until it shuts off traction and stability control. And from there, you basically just want to mash the brake pedal with your left foot, mash the gas with your right foot, and let go and hang on for the ride. So here we go. Not bad. 60. You can really feel when you have launch control active in that Sport Plus drive mode how much it firms up the shifts in that 8-speed automatic transmission. Hey everyone, welcome back to another video here on the channel. Today you join me in the 2025 Genesis G80 3.5T Sport Prestige, or the most sporty iteration of the G80 that is currently offered. Now this is my very first Genesis press vehicle, and I'm very excited actually at the G80 specifically because I actually have quite a bit of experience with the last generation G80 before it became the actual Genesis nameplate, still under the Hyundai franchise, and there's certainly a ton of improvements, but of course this vehicle still offers a ton of luxury. And it's not slow actually by any means. So under the hood of this G80, you're going to find the 3.5 liter twin turbo V6 paired to an 8-speed torque converted automatic transmission. This engine puts out 375 horsepower and 391 pound-feet of torque through all 4 wheels, and because this one is the Sport Prestige, it does offer the rear mechanical limited slip differential, 4-wheel steering, and a few other amenities to make this thing just a little bit more sporty than that of the standard 3.5T in the lesser trim levels. Now, as I was just mentioning here at the beginning of this video, I'm actually very excited to get the G80 as my very first Genesis press car, because going back in my family history with, I guess, Hyundai and Hyundai Genesis vehicles, my dad actually owned a 2013 Genesis 5.0 R-Spec, 2015 Genesis 3.8 Ultimate package, the most fully loaded first model year of that last generation G80, as well as a 2019 Genesis G70 3.3T Dynamic Edition, which was one of the 2 launch editions under the G70, the Design and the Dynamic Edition, which gave you a couple other performance enhancements or benefits over that of the standard fully loaded 3.3T Sport. But nonetheless, this car is in its refreshed version in the next generation following the G80, and it is absolutely tremendous to see how far the product and the brand has come, over the last really decade since that last generation did debut here in the US market. Now, starting out with my usual visibility, behind the wheel of the G80, it's actually very, very good. So over the hood, with the seat in its lowest position, you can just barely see the front hood in front of you, but the dash is actually very low in its overall design, and you have great forward visibility. The pillars up front are actually on the slimmer side with little quarter glass windows, and then you have the door mounted mirrors, which of course are power folding, auto dimming, and have all of the luxurious amenities that one would expect in a vehicle of this class. Now, looking over your left shoulder, the pillar back here, does kind of get in the way, but actually it's, again, a little bit on the slimmer side. And then out the back, I'm happy to say that all of the headrests basically are flush with the top of the deck lid. So there's, really next to no visibility hindrances or impact out the rear window. And the rear window is a little bit on the smaller side just due to the fact that it is a sedan and, just the inherent design of this vehicle. But visibility and drivability is, really no issue here from the front of the vehicle. Now, putting our foot down into it once again here in comfort drive mode, it still gets up and scoots when you put your foot down into it, and you can immediately tell with any sort of meaningful steering input that rear steering really does make this vehicle much more maneuverable and a little bit more agile, along with the variable ratio steering rack that the Sport Prestige gets as I'm driving, which changes not only for the drive modes, but also some of the speed and other characteristics that they programmed into the system just to make it feel a little bit more performance oriented and a little bit more nimble. But this vehicle is still definitely geared towards luxury, and it does that extremely well. Now, in terms of ride quality, this vehicle has the Genesis adaptive damper system with the read ahead technology, which essentially uses the built-in cameras at the front of the vehicle to read roadway conditions and any major imperfections that the vehicle might see, to basically allow the damper to be slightly softer to go over that imperfection in the road and then go back to its normal range of dampening or whatever drive mode setting that you actually have programmed. And I think as a whole, the ride quality, especially with the 20-inch alloy wheels that this vehicle is riding on, actually does very well. And, you know, considering the tires are a little bit on the more low profile side of things, it still maintains a, you know, fantastic amount of luxury in its ride quality. And I think the adaptive dampers actually have a good range of variability from the base comfort setting, the standard sport setting, and then all the way up to its most aggressive Sport Plus. You can really feel the difference just pressing the button, changing it here into sport mode. You can feel it firm up just a little bit, bumps get a little bit more noticeable, and then finally going into Sport Plus, of course, the vehicle downshifts a couple gears, gets ready to go under acceleration if you put your foot down into it at all. And those turbos are on tap pretty much any time you need additional passing power. So as a whole, I think this vehicle does luxury extremely well. And I do want to go over my bumpy section of roadway and give you guys my impressions there. But after spending a full week with this G80, I have to say it is very interesting to see how many people here in the Midwest are still relatively unfamiliar with the Genesis brand. Now, of course, there's people like myself, like my dad, like, you know, anybody who has either seen one in person, ridden one, or knows a family or friend with one. They know what the Genesis brand is all about and how it is different from that of, obviously, Hyundai, which at one point in time, it did start under that brand. But Genesis is currently, you know, has a broad product portfolio, and the G80 and the G90 are arguably the two products that have been extremely instrumental in facilitating that transition into a full lineup with sedans and SUVs and even electric vehicles for that matter. And I think it's just awesome to see how far the brand has come, although they're still working out, you know, teething issues, if you will, with their dealer franchise network and, you know, where they want ultimately their dealers positioned in relation to one another and how many they want total of them. But as you can see, going over my bumpy section of road there, you know, this vehicle is as smooth as can be. And, you know, for a daily driver looking for, you know, basically a combination of, you know, comfort, driving dynamics, and relatively large, or I guess mid-size physical dimensions of the vehicle, I think this vehicle checks most, if not all, of the boxes that one would expect. But of course, going back to that Hyundai Genesis versus Genesis, you know, comparison and how far they've come, pricing has reflected that over the last, you know, generation of their vehicles. And this vehicle that I'm currently driving in its fully loaded form, once again, stickers at just over $78,000, including destination. Now, of course, the G80 in its lineup is offered in a 4-cylinder and a 6-cylinder variant, with the 4-cylinder starting just under $60,000, including destination. So if you want a base G80, you don't need all of the creature comforts, you don't need the additional power from the twin-turbo V6. You can still get a very nicely equipped, very comfortable, and fairly luxurious vehicle for around that $60,000 price point. And then, of course, it goes up from there. All-wheel drive is now standard on the G80, which is awesome. They did at one point sell a rear-wheel drive version of this vehicle in this generation in the pre-facelift for a couple model years. But ultimately, I don't believe that sold too well, and Genesis consolidated it to an all-wheel drive lineup. But transitioning here onto the interior of this vehicle, this one is finished in the beautiful black and red Napa two-tone leather interior with, of course, the quilted accents, red accent stitching. And for this refresh, this vehicle did get some updated technologies, including this large 27-inch diagonal OLED digital cluster and infotainment system with wireless Android Auto, Apple CarPlay. You get some revised hard touch controls down here in the center console. Carbon fiber trim is going to be in this Sport Prestige. And as a whole, the switch gear, The quality on the interior and just the fit and finish is pretty darn good. This vehicle is still assembled overseas in Korea, so it's not one of the Genesis models that have transitioned here into the US market for final assembly like the GV70 and GV70 electric. But, you know, just taking a look at the interior, it has all of the, you know, amenities and soft touch points that one would ask for. Bang & Olufsen premium surround sound system, head-up display with some advanced functionality. Of course, you have power rear window shades with manual side sunshades, heated and ventilated front seats, heated second row seats. The list really goes on. It's a very nice interior for the most part. I like this ledge that you can rest your arm on if you need to use that touchscreen, or of course you have that multimedia infotainment controller here in the center console, which if you've seen my dedicated likes and dislikes video, I do go over a lot of the dislikes I have with this vehicle are actually, believe it or not, in relation to the multimedia controller and the new infotainment system, which is something I was not expecting to have a real issue with, given this vehicle just went through a mid-cycle product enhancement or a refresh. Now, the main issues I have with the system have been, it has at times been very slow to connect to wireless Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, slower than that of even the, you know, umbrella vehicles, including the Hyundai and Kia with their new updated infotainment systems. And secondly, the infotainment controller, it is a touch-sensitive pad on top, believe it or not, but the controller location in relation to the armrest and where your hand naturally rests here in the center console, and the quality of the controller just feels a little bit less than it actually should be in a vehicle of this stature or this price point. So basically, if they switch the, you know, crystal gear shift and the infotainment controller, reverse these two, I think I would actually prefer using this interior in the infotainment system a lot more than I currently do. But with that said, it's still not a bad system. It's, you know, better than it used to be, and I think the average person would not be upset with using it on a daily basis. But I will say the touch-sensitive touchpad here on the right side of the steering wheel is somewhat frustrating because it's the easiest way to skip track when streaming media inside this vehicle, and it's, you know, you have to be fairly delicate and deliberate with your inputs to actually get it to do what you want it to be. But there is a good amount of user customization for the digital cluster, utilizing some of these physical steering wheel buttons. All in all, I don't think this is a bad technology, feature set, or design. It's just my personal preference. And going back to some of the older Hyundai Genesis cars, they did have the rotary dial here, more centrally located, closer to the center armrest, with all the shortcuts located around it. And I actually preferred that design a little bit more than this one, but now they do locate the wireless charging pad in this area to kind of take up the space where the old multimedia controller used to be. Now, putting our foot down in it, this thing just goes. I mean, it is no slouch whatsoever. And even here in this comfort mode, it holds its own with these Pirelli P0 All Seasons equipped on this exact variant. Now, of course, as we merge onto the interstate here, we have the blind spot view camera system. We'll go ahead and activate the Highway Drive Assist 2 functionality, which does have some augmented reality functions here inside of the heads-up display. So it gives you a little symbol to indicate or see that truck that is currently in front of us. We'll go ahead and resume here. It has, of course, the lane change assist functionality. So with the touch of a turn signal, you can go ahead and merge into the left or right-hand lanes. And overall, I think the Highway Drive Assist and all of the driver assistance safety systems inside of this vehicle are actually very robust and, for the most part, do exactly what they're designed to do. Now, this does have the forward attention monitor system, which monitors your face and your eyes to make sure you are paying attention while using these systems. And I have to admit, I haven't had a ton of time behind the wheel of this vehicle to actually know for a fact if there's any potential issues with the attention monitor like that have arose in some other Hyundai products since this launch over the last year or two. But I would think that Genesis has tuned this to be, you know, robust in its performance and hopefully not have any issues with polarized or colored lens sunglasses I think it's up there with some of the best in this segment, although you will start to find on this segment and higher within the German rivals some really advanced either hands-free, eyes-on, or just slightly more advanced driver assist systems that will do more functionality, such as lane changes hands-free. You can look over to the right side of the vehicle, it will perform lane changes, things like that. So I think it's very competitive now here in the life cycle of this product, but I really hope Genesis and I guess the Hyundai Motor Group in general can start to come out with their iteration of a hands-free driving assist system here over their next 2 to 3 years at the most, because as we know, of course, General Motors, Volvo is now starting to roll out more advanced systems, and then of course we have Ford's Blue Cruise. There are hands-free systems that have been on the market for pushing 5+ years at this point, and the fact that I guess Hyundai Motor Group or Genesis in general does not have that system quite yet is a little bit disappointing, but for a hands-on system, it is relatively uninvasive. This is certainly a product that you can tell has been well refined in its current generation. They've made tweaks to the chassis, bushings, everything that they can do within ease, without changing or reinventing the whole platform, just to make this more isolating, more comfortable, more luxurious in this segment to keep up with that of some of its rivals. Now, with that being said, I think over time you can tell that this car is just getting slightly long in the tooth, but then again, we are only about 4 model years into this current generation, so it still has another year or two to actually run through its product life cycle before a new next generation vehicle is obviously going to be introduced. But for the $78,000 price point that this vehicle is priced at, it is going to be kind of in the thick of it with some vehicles that might offer a little bit more performance than that of this one. Although this one's not a slouch by any means, but it is a little bit down on power, is a little bit down on its performance capabilities versus that of some of those other competitors. So do keep that in mind if you're looking for a midsize luxury sedan, that if your goal is strictly performance, there are probably going to be a couple better options out there. But if you like a blend of performance and luxury, and performance is not going to be your priority, then I think the G80 is certainly going to be worth a look, especially if you have a dealership network that is going to be available in your area to easily service or correct any issues that may arise, anything like that. Now, as we start to wrap up this video here on the interstate, in terms of fuel economy over the last week, like I said, I have not done a bunch of highway type of driving with this vehicle, so I don't know what I guess your best case MPG is going to be. But in terms of worst case around town driving, I have really been seeing about 14 or 15 MPG in strictly city, lower speed, stop and go type of driving. So do keep that in mind with this twin turbo V6, as I would say it's a little bit on the thirstier side of things. So if you're looking for more towards fuel economy, the 4-cylinder might be a good option, or just be accepted of that it's not going to be the best fuel economy out there, even in a vehicle of this class or this segment. But overall, I think that is basically going to do it here for my driving review and driving impressions of the 2025 Genesis G80 3.5T Sport Prestige, or again, the most fully loaded iteration of this vehicle. And it is awesome to actually have this opportunity coming full circle, because as you know, 10 years ago, the 2015 Hyundai Genesis, Ultimate Package was really a change of pace for the Hyundai and luxury side of the brand. And I think they really knocked it out of the park with that generation, and it really set them up for success here in their current product portfolio, not only with the current generation G80, but also all of their other vehicles within the lineup. It brought brand recognition, product recognition, and really a sense that they are serious about the luxury segment, and you certainly get that sense of luxury and status driving around in town, especially in the area that does not sell Genesis product, which, believe it or not, actually has several vehicles driving around because people like them and obviously think they are a maybe a value play, or just like the design, like the aesthetic, like the feel, or grew up with a Genesis product and ultimately went out and bought one and are now driving it in an area that unfortunately is not supported by the dealer franchise. But nonetheless, that is going to do it here for this full driving review and driving impressions of the 2025 Genesis G80 Sport Prestige. I want to give a huge thanks to Genesis for sending this vehicle out for me to test and review. Of course, you guys for watching. Let me know your thoughts on this vehicle down in the comment section below. Do you guys agree that the Genesis product is really a serious competitor in this segment? Do you own one of these products? Is this a vehicle that you're interested in purchasing? Leave all that down in the comment section below. I'm always curious about your thoughts and ultimately what you think of some of these newer brands to the market. Like I said, I have a decent amount of experience with some of the older products, either within the Genesis product lineup or the last generation, and really 2 generations of Genesis now that I think about it. And to go back to that 2013 and go to this vehicle in just over 10 years times is mind-blowing, because really it went from a nice Hyundai to really a serious luxury competition vehicle. So with all that being said, I appreciate continued support here on the channel. Hit that like button, subscribe if you guys haven't already. Check out additional content I have here on this Genesis G80. And with all being said, I hope to catch you guys in the next one.